You see, the bank coins are just one small piece of a great change that is taking place around the world. I mean, this evolution of the world has been going on for quite some time now. But if you look at, and I want to clarify some of my thoughts on Swift and any type of system like the new financial system that I do believe 100% will glue everything together. It is a part of the natural evolution of the systems of the world. There must be a glue amongst the chaos. I would never think that Swift would utilize a system such as the XRPL or Stellar or Algorand because of the technologies. No, they could always hire. I know this. I'm very privy to these things. They could always hire the same or similar minds as Ripple or Stellar. And of course, they're going to absorb technology, study them. All of these financial systems do that. We know that. That is not what I hinge my thoughts on. I hinge my thoughts on a multipolar world, a world that has been ripped apart. Let me be very clear. A world where most of the countries in the world are begging for BRICS Nation membership. Why? Because of the weaponization of systems like Swift. So if a great portion of the globe is against the weaponization of Swift, the weaponization of the dollar, no matter what technology Swift has, the banks of Swift, no matter what technology Swift has, it is not the technology that the world would turn away from or would have a lack of requirement for. They would turn their backs on Swift and are turning their backs on Swift because it is a weapon. The bank coins are a part of the natural evolution of this cycle. The renewing of systems, a neutral glue, a neutral bridge asset. There is an inevitability that something will win in this. We just happen to be some of the early viewers and possessors of a piece of that technology. But in a world that has been torn apart by its tribalism, by its hunger and lust for power, and its abuse of such, these powers of the world, quote unquote, so-called powers, will turn their backs on each other, have turned their backs on each other. And yet there is a dichotomy there. They still need each other. They need a glue in the middle while they're able to interact with each other, interface, transact, while also not staring down the barrel of a weapon. And Swift, make no mistake about it, is a weapon. And that is the aspect of Swift that leads me to believe in the future that all of these nations joining BRICS and dollar dumping every day. India was recently dollar dumping. Iran, I think they're trying to ban the dollar over there. Of course, everywhere else has been dollar dumping as well. You can look this up. This is all facts. But if they're taking those measures, why would they still participate in that system? Now, understand also, well, I don't say you understand. I'm not here to dictate what you think whatsoever. I'm just giving you my thoughts. That's it. And you could disagree with them. I'm perfectly fine with that. But I have this understanding that enemies have no obligation to tell you the truth. Correct? Why would they? So that you can be privy to their plans and then mess them up. And we do know that the powers will do that. So when you have BRICS nations members, let's say like South Africa, who their system right now is very dichotomic and dualistic as they have a rising force, I'll say that, that is attempting to take over command South Africa. And yet you have a legacy portion of South Africa that's still very much shoulder to shoulder with the West. So there's a dichotomy there. I have this understanding. But you will have members who say, well, you know, we're not trying to replace SWIFT. I know people are going to pull those articles up and say, and it's going to say South Africa right there. But South Africa is a key member of BRICS nations. They have no obligation to tell the West the truth, the resources that they sit upon. They understand the tokenization of everything. And just because they say something doesn't mean that they're not working on something behind the scenes. Every country does this. They have systems that they work on. So this brings us back to that common BRICS currency that they pulled back from. And, they've, of course, been focusing on local currency trade. This has everything to do with the new financial system, folks. I'm laying it out to you as vividly as I can right now. I usually don't do this. But they've been transacting in local currencies, which has taken the light off of their development and testing of the common BRICS currency. What was the common BRICS currency meant for? What was the common system meant for? What is BRICS Bank meant for? What were those future banks that they were talking about meant for? It was meant to take BRICS nations, which, if they really have, they just added new members, by the way, but if they really have 21 or more countries that want to become members in the future, they're a major force in the world. By the way, a lot of those members of BRICS nations control resources, the likes of which the West couldn't even fathom. Well, maybe they could fathom it, but they just don't have access to those types of resources. That's power. That's power. But the reason for them coming up with those systems was to get away from SWIFT. So they couldn't be kicked out of the SWIFT system. So their banks couldn't be ostracized. So then what is the future of SWIFT? Who has the greater trajectory into the future? See with a visionary eye, if you will, SWIFT or Ripple, the XRPL? Who can glue everything together, and maybe not everything? Let's say I'll go lesser than that, just to play that game. Who can glue the integral, important pieces and aspects together of these societies' financial systems and stay at a neutrality? Right now, Ripple, XRP, the XRPL, and any company building on it could, I'm not saying that they are, could be at the crux of it. And if you look at their setup, how Ripple has good relationship with the Monetary Authority of Singapore. They have good relationships in Africa. They have good relationships in the United States. They have good relationships in the UK, Europe. They have good relationships in Australia. Can SWIFT say the same? Because I'm pretty sure they kicked out a lot of banks of certain places. And in those same places, Ripple also has good relationships. The world is changing. Change is the only constant. And that is why I see it as a great possibility. Not that SWIFT would partner with Ripple or something willy-nilly. Not at all. Not at all. But if Ripple makes itself, if the XRP, the XRPL makes itself an integral part, an inevitable part, a part of the inevitable evolution of the world's financial systems, by being at that neutrality, by keeping those relationships everywhere, that they can move capital everywhere and nothing and no one will stop them because they have no desire to. Because Ripple, XRPL, Volante, whoever, they have no dog in the fight. They didn't play sides like SWIFT did, or the banks of SWIFT, however you want to phrase that. But if they make themselves a part of that natural evolution, then the capital will have to flow through them. And this goes for any bank coin that wanted to step forward, but I'm taking XRPL, XRP, and Ripple as a prime example because they are at the forefront of this of this. So it's not about tech or technology for me. It's about a changing of the guard, a changing of the minds that say we will not be beaten over the head with a system and controlled as though we were petulant children any longer. And so they're scrambling. You're witnessing the scramble. They're scrambling to find a new way. Common BRICS currency, one path. Trading in local currencies, another path. They've explored DLT alternatives. They've explored legacy system alternatives, digital alternatives, e-money alternatives. They've done it all. They've been scrambling and looking, which means that the change is visible and it's real. So although things exist the way that they do now, with each moment, that old world, that old way of thinking, that those old systems are fading. Not to mention that those systems are just outright unsustainable, completely debt-ridden. How much longer can they exist in such a way? Their federal central bank sitting on losses. Their regional banks getting crushed. Every other day, there's some sort of lawsuit going on. The customers turning their backs on the banks. The systems as a whole, the financial systems, are screaming for something new. Now, once again, I've iterated this in the past. I believe we could outright dominate. I don't believe we need SWIFT. Just a bonus. Just a bonus. An interesting talking point, a possibility, nothing more. I am not an absolutist. Not at all. I don't need to be an absolutist. I need to be able to adjust. An absolutist says, let's go this way, and they only know that way. A problem pops up while we're going this way, they have no other options. I'm adjustable. We all agree to go this way, we go that way. A problem pops up, I adjust. You can either go over the problem, underneath it, left or right, around it. We can go directly through the problem by force, or we can turn and go back another path. I consider all of these things. I am very adjustable, not an absolutist, not at all. Strategic thinking requires there be a multitude of pathways that one can choose in order to find victory. But in order to do that, you must think in a multidimensional way. At least this is how I do. I can't tell others what to do. But what is the possibility? Not guarantee. What is the possibility that because the systems of the world are no longer compatible, not tech-wise, but because of the minds of the leaders of the world, no longer compatible. They're all in conflict. They're screaming multipolar world. They're screaming new age of some sort. What is the possibility that the new financial system, and along with it, the new 1%, is rapidly becoming an inevitability? I'm just asking questions, nothing more. So this little article here is from Fourth.News, and it's titled, Fed Losses Breach $100 billion as Interest Costs Rise. That's another thing. I mean, these central banks are doing a terrible job. Their monetary policy has been loose for the longest time. They say they're going to tighten monetary policy. They never do. They never do. Now, don't get me wrong. It wasn't because of the Fed so much that when Silvergate Bank and SVB went down, the banks themselves said, hey, we're going to tighten a little bit. And that's when you heard Janet Yellen come out and say what she said about, hey, you know, banks are tightening already. I don't think we're going to have to raise interest rates for too much longer, which obviously I went against that and say, yeah, they're going to continue to raise interest rates. And they have the entire time until now. That was said in the spring. And I think they're going to continue. As you saw, core inflation, you saw inflation went up. But the respect of the financial systems in the West has been lost. Now, the West has never had that much respect for other systems. So it doesn't go both ways. So because individuals may say, well, other financial systems and other economies are not doing well either. Yes, but they were always on the come up, while the West, United States in particular, was always thought to be at the top. So they're perceived very differently. So those other economies that were coming up and were looking at the West as some sort of authority figure and let them play that way for a while, no longer have the same respect. Number one, their systems are doing terribly, the West. Number two, the leadership has not been great for a long time, So respect has been lost on that end as well. So once again, just looking at all of their financial ecosystems, including SWIFT, there is no way that those other countries that are coalescing together around the demise of the dollar in all Western weaponized systems, as far as the dollar, SWIFT, etc. There's no way that they're going to continue to participate in systems like that over the long term into the future. Short term, they may play a little bit, and they may let things continue just for a little bit longer while it's necessary. But when that necessity is gone, they will shirk those systems. It says here, Federal Reserve losses breached $100 billion mark. Central bank data released on Thursday showed, and they're likely to go a lot higher before the red ink stops. There's no way that this system will continue. The new financial system is the only way. Either that or complete collapse of everything. That's it. Without the new financial system, everything would just be completely chaotic. The cycle just keeps continuing. So they print money, then they take it out, then they print money and they print more each time. Then they have to take out a little bit, then they print more. And the debt just keeps going higher and higher and higher, and things become more illiquid. Affordability of living, they rub other countries the wrong way. Affordability of living continues to go up. They have no solutions. This is the U.S. Central Bank is continuing to pay out more in interest costs than it takes in from interest it earns on bonds it owns and from the services it provides to the financial sector. Another thing, a lot of countries don't like that the United States feels they don't have to worry about their debt because they have the world's reserve currency. They're looking to remove that status. They're looking to remove that caveat, that protection, that shield. What happens to the United States if the dollar is dumped everywhere, shirked everywhere, right? And it's no longer majorly needed in the world? That is possible. The dollar doesn't have to go away. The dollar doesn't have to go to zero. They just want to greatly diminish it. Now, what will be wiser is that everybody came to a middle ground. That's the new financial system. Have something in the middle, be able to transact fairly across the board so that the people can continue to live, hopefully live well and survive. That's not typically how the people at the top think. They forget how the people on the bottom suffer, as you can see right now with a lot of things going on within the United States. So another thing, a lot of people think about currencies diminishing or collapsing, and they just typically think of the US dollar. And I understand that because the dollar is what a lot of people use to put food on the table, pay bills. But what I think should be looked at more closely is a complete collapse of most fiat currencies around the world, the ending of the age of fiat currencies, because fiat currencies have always been something is seemingly temporary and non-sustainable. It was meant to play for a while, to be able to do things that they didn't believe could be done with the systems they had back then, with something solid being used for payment or something solid being used to back a fiat currency. They didn't know any other way. And so the outright fiat currencies, unbacked, were always meant to be something to play, and it had to be temporary. It had to be. It's not sustainable. It just isn't. But a global currency crash, a global economic crash, a global depression, that's something that I think is very feasible and that I'm looking at and keeping an eye on. Hopefully that does not happen. But I have to look at both sides. I can't only just look at the positive. I have to look at the negative. Every shield has a reverse side. The pendulum swings equally to the left as it does to the right. In order to have 360 degrees of information, I got to know 180 this way, 180 that way. All right. So global currency crash, where everything is greatly diminished, and they move to what? So a lot of people will say, well, the dollar were to collapse, it would take down all these other economies with it. Are you sure that the rest of the world cares? Are you sure they're not taking precautionary measures? They're not willing to sacrifice that particular aspect. Are you sure about that? Because a lot of their people across the world have been suffering for a long time, and they've taken umbrage to the way that the West lives. Okay, so before one makes that statement, they must be sure that the other countries are not willing to make that sacrifice. Number two, they've been stacking gold while the regular people, let's make this clear, the regular people of the world continue to hold cash and dollars, yuan. All the people at the top and the bankers and the banks, The governments have been stacking gold, silver, precious metals, resources, so that if anything happens, that could hold them over. They've been buying tons of gold to hold them over, if just in case anything happens, or maybe because something is going to happen. Everything has a life cycle, so it's inevitable that something must come to an end. Everything that has a beginning has an ending. Where's the end for this? See, so no, I mean, there's a difference between what the reality for the people on the ground is. Sorry, I have my card here. I keep looking down at that for my notes. But there's a difference between what the people on the ground go through and what the people at the top go through, except for those few wise ones, those few chosen ones, if you will, where they have a mind to prepare just in case. They hope nothing happens, but they hope for the best, prepare for the worst. And they've been doing certain things, taking precautionary measures, not financial advice. Do what you want. So they would be prepared. They will be prepared. They better be careful too. You better have something to protect those things, not advice. Right? But they have something solid. So the dollar tumbles, a select few will glide through there with, I won't say no troubles, but less trouble than others. So, and that's what the countries have been doing. Why have they been stacking record amounts of gold? So SWIFT-based systems, banking systems, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I'm not. And there's a possibility that these things occur, maybe not in my lifetime, maybe not in my generation, but another. But those systems are not sustainable. And I think we're going to see a lot this next few years. As a matter of fact, we've already seen the beginning of it. I think there's others with great power that want more banks to collapse, that want these systems to be crushed. Why? Because there's a power also to grab. The power that they can have if they were to pull off usurping the throne, taking over the throne of crypto, DLTs, Hashgraph, whatever. The power that they could have with that system is unfathomable. They could do things with those systems that they could never do with cash and with the banking system. Know your customer, where people have to voluntarily tell you something, or they could opt out. No, then the systems that they're trying to set up, you have to, they can trace everything. So that's another thing, another caveat as to why I think they're leaning aboard that way. I think they don't want these systems to go on for much longer. They must, instead of waiting, look, there's a natural fall to everything, correct? But you don't have to wait for it to naturally fall. You could bring it down right now if you wanted to. You could bring that thing down and build on top of it. Why wait? I think a lot of them have that mind state. Why wait? Do you see what is going on? This is why they keep the new financial system quiet. One reason. I know there's always opposing forces. They all differ in degree. I know that. But it's one reason why they keep it quiet. They're not ready to launch it just yet. Maybe they didn't get everything to the point where it needs to be just yet. But look how they're overloading everything. Everything. Everything's to an extreme. Things are not sustainable when everything is to an extreme. It's not. It's not. One company buys up too many houses. There's a bunch of houses sitting empty. Prices are too high. Price gouging is too high. Certain areas are way overpopulated. There's enough land for everybody to have living and stuff like that, but the affordability of living, and then people, everything is much nicer in the cities, but still, nonetheless, super overpopulated. A lot of places super overpopulated. Once again, I reiterate, doesn't have to be that way. But what I'm showing is everything is so extreme. Debt, extreme levels of debt in the government, extreme levels of debt when it comes to individuals. That's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. Even if we look 5-10 years, I mean, one could think with the perception that, or perspective that that's still short term. Because what is going on now affects not only us, but those who come after us, right? So generationally, we have to look with a visionary eye. but it's not sustainable. Not sustainable. The wielding of power, not sustainable by the West. That's not sustainable. So this all circles back to this new system, this new age that they're trying to usher in. You see it all around you. All around you, the pieces are moving. Just my humble opinion. Just my humble opinion. So, we will see. We'll see. Could I be wrong? Yes. Am I afraid of that? Absolutely not. Do I feel that I'm more on the right side? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I think I'm going by factual information that I'm observing, not just going by my own mind. They kicked members out of SWIFT in multiples of countries. They weaponized the dollar, weaponized SWIFT against multiple countries. And now other countries are thinking about having conflict with the West, and they have to look at SWIFT and say, et tu, SWIFT? You too, SWIFT, like Caesar, as SWIFT gets ready for that knife to, you know what happened to Caesar, don't you? So I just don't see how their position as of now isn't permanently altered. And I think they know that. I think all roads, I say this boldly, I think all roads lead to the new financial system. But once again, we shall see. So now that you have that information, what are you going to do with it? I know what I'm going to do with it. So until next time, let's get to the money.